Welcome to Extremely Valid Points.
We are three business owners and friends who enjoy practical, real-life discussions about business, marketing, and creativity.
Your hosts are Nathan and Jenny Sala, the owners of World Light Media, a digital marketing agency focused on helping organizations grow through online leads.
And Dave Wilkins, the owner of Ellipsis Production Co., a video production company that specializes in creating meaningful content for businesses and nonprofits.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. And along the way, we just might happen to make some extremely valid points.
Hi, welcome back to Extremely Valid Points. Thanks for joining us. We're here again for part 2 with Rebecca Kirkman. She is the owner of Higher Up Staffing Services, and she recently won an award for being the number one female-owned business in the Central Valley. Welcome back, Rebecca.
Thank you.
So I'm curious about all of the changes that have been happening in the past few decades. I've been out of the job market for almost 2 decades now since, we started our own business, and I haven't thankfully had to, go interview. But I'm curious about how the whole hiring process has evolved in terms of from the perspective of an applicant, preparing the resume. I used to make my resume and make sure it was, that was the big deal. But I don't even know if that's even as relevant or important anymore. And
because
maybe
the resumes we've looked at, is that why you think?
Maybe, yeah. And they don't, sometimes, they call them CVs now. What's the correct term? So
I think CV comes from Europe. I could be wrong, but I think that's what they're called over there. So that's where the term CV comes in. When I at first was looking for a job, you had to have a cover letter. And your cover letter had to tell them why you were good for the job. And you had to write one for every single job you applied for. I remember faxing the resume. Or do you remember opening the paper and highlighting? Yeah, that's how I do remember that. It's definitely more technical today. It's simpler for people. The reason why you probably see resumes that are not as detailed as the resume that you would have seen 10 years ago is because most job sources, an individual can go on there and put in a profile and list all their information, and it converts it to a resume. And so when they're completing that, they're completing it as if they're completing an application. So they're not putting a lot of details in it and then converting it to a resume. And then that's what they're using to send out. I don't think it's a good practice. I think that that somebody will shine better if they take the time and open a Word document and create a resume. But that is the reason why you're probably seeing ones that are very short today. Resumes are still used quite a bit. Sometimes some organizations will use applications instead of resumes, but for the most part, we're still working off resumes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you offer any kind of coaching for either the people that are looking for a job or the employers as far as, hey, if you're really strong here, but that's not coming across, or,
yes.
This is attractive to people, but you're not really advertising that.
Yes, absolutely. So when we're in an interview with a candidate, we definitely go through their entire resume. Luckily, when we're interviewing someone, we're also getting to know the job. And if we've already placed that type of job before, we know what types of things individuals like that would do. So if it's missing on the resume, we know to ask those questions. So if it's like maybe somebody that specializes in accounts payable, maybe they just list, I just pay the company bills, right? Which is really simple. But we know there's more to an accounts payable position than just that. So we can ask additional questions. And as we notice it's not on their resume, we'll work with them on updating it, adding it. We'll do simple things like font changes and grammar checks and, formatting. But for the most part, content, we ask the individual to write it. Because the last thing I want to do is for me to write your resume and then this other person goes in the interview and they think they're interviewing me, right?
Right, sure, yeah.
It needs to be in your own words, basically.
Yeah, just helping them to put their best foot forward.
Mm-hmm. With every interview, we do a resume consult and make suggestions. And with every interview, we give suggestions on the interview afterwards. Some people really appreciate it. I'd say 95% of the time they really appreciate it. Sometimes people get really offended. I actually had a bad review written about me on somebody that believed that they were an HR manager, and they definitely were not. they were not an HR manager. And I very nicely tried to point out to them what type of role that they're actually in than what they believe that they were in. And they got very upset and wrote a bad Yelp review. But I'm pretty sure that they did not ever get a job as an HR manager at that time. So just it's part of our process, but some people receive it well. Sure. A very small portion don't receive the suggestions very well.
So what are some of the most common tips? Say somebody who's going in for an interview, what are the 3 or 5 most important things that they need to know?
Ooh, okay. So 3 to 5.
Or 2 or 1.
Well, I think the first thing is research. Never walk into an interview and have no idea who you're meeting with. And when I say that, I mean looking up the company, understanding what they do, but looking up the person they're meeting. And most people have a LinkedIn profile, or you can just Google their name and find out information about them. If you don't know who you're meeting with, again, most companies are online. You can look up who would be an owner, who would be a manager. You can go on LinkedIn and look at what employees work at this company and kind of assess, like, which person do I think I'm going to meet? I'm interviewing for a purchasing position. That's probably the purchasing manager. So research, I think, is key. So I think that's kind of number 1. And then number 2, I think, is just being comfortable. You already know yourself. You know your job. You can answer any question. People like talking about themselves. And so it's just a matter of not getting nervous and preparation also going into the interview. So I would suggest to people, don't drink too much coffee or any type of high energy drinks before you're going in for an interview, but drink a little, You
want to be a little perky, but not too much.
Yes. You want to prepare the day of. Definitely have your outfit ready to go, have your resume ready to go. It's something that you don't want to wait till the last minute and be rushing. I would suggest listening to music on the way there. Most of the time when people stress, music kind of helps you calm. So you start listening to the lyrics instead of thinking about all the things you're doing wrong. And then the other thing I suggest doing is just looking at the people they're meeting with as if it's a friend and acting the same way towards everyone you interact with. Because little do people know that most companies, they will ask the receptionist at the front desk, how was that person when they came into the interview? Were they kind? Were they polite? Were they rude? Were they, giving you dirty looks and, staring at their phone because I was running behind? And so they'll ask behavioral questions of that person at the front desk. So it's very key to just being calm and trying to be your natural self too. So those are my 2 tips.
That was like 3 or 4. That's awesome.
That's
yeah.
very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd like to switch gears a little bit and just glean a little bit more on your personal success as a businesswoman. Do you have any advice for people starting out, either women specifically or anyone, whatever you like?
Like tips to success. Well, I think it's a general one. It's not necessarily a tip for just women, but I think in growing a business, what's important is you've probably heard the term live within your means, right? And I think when you own a business, you live within less than your means, I think in order to grow a business, you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. You have to be willing to reinvest in things. What I find is people, you start doing well, you get a good job, even if you don't own a business, and you start raising your bills to the level of your income. And I think in a business, that is a formula for a 5-year fallout. You're going to keep, raising everything that you own and going into this debt. And then you hit 5 years and something catastrophic happens and you can't live through it. So I would say that's a key that I think, the reason why I've continued to be able to grow the business is because I pay for what I need, but I don't buy what I don't. And so I don't have a Ferrari, even though that would be nice. But
maybe someday you will.
Maybe not. But I think practicality is important. And I think being prepared to take less from the business than you're giving from it is super important to be able to grow it. And then the other thing, it is also related to money, is that one thing that's helped me is I try to run the business debt free. So, because I don't want to have something catastrophic happen and I not be able to fund my payroll for my employees. And I guess that would be my third suggestion on growing a business is making sure you're investing in your staff. They are your number one marketer. They should be your highest line item on your P&L. And I think they're the most important piece to a successful business is the right staff for one, but also making sure that they feel valued and they're passionate about growing it too is the key. So it's kind of a general. I'll try to think of something that's female related.
No, those are all really great. Really, really great. Hard things to do, but good to hear. It's like one of those, it hurts and then it feels good at the same time to hear it. It's like, it's truth.
It's truth. Well, you'll know it when you're 5 years in business and something happens and you're like, it's hard to get through it. So I think I had to experience that before I opened a business. I had mentioned that I had started in staffing and I was a top rep, but the recession hit in 2008 or 9. And we lost quite a bit of business. Even though I didn't have my own business at the time, I was working for an employer. And, my 6-figure salary went down to half. And I was at a point in my life where I was charging a big chunk of change every month on my credit card, and I was no problem paying it off. And then the recession hit, and all of a sudden I couldn't pay it off. And so that was a little lesson learned prior to opening a business, which helped me in approaching the business the right way. So,
Yeah, and I imagine that serves you not only well within your own business, right? But being able to connect to other business owners who have that same mindset, their growth mentality, and finding employees that are going to, fit. They're going to be, expecting the unexpected and putting in their value and that kind of thing as well.
Right. I think, like I said, when you relate it to people as being one of the key things in a growing business is that you definitely need to have people on your team that are passionate about the growth too. So I say drink the Kool-Aid a lot, but they truly need to, or else your business isn't going to be successful. You can have somebody that can do an amazing job. They're great at what they do, but they don't really care about you or your business. I mean, you care about them, but they just don't. They're coming in for the paycheck. And I don't think that you get far with people like that. I think that you have to have people on your team who have the same vision and goal as you do, or at least are willing to fight and work and crawl and, help you get to your goal too. So it is something you can ask in interviews. And it is something that's easy to see very early on, too. Which luckily, on Attempt to Hire, you'd figure it out fast.
How do you ask that question on an interview?
So I look for personal goals. I look for individuals that have personal goals. So I ask them about their goals. Sometimes people say like, "Oh, I want to get this degree," or, but I ask them, "What's a more personal goal that you're shooting for?" Like, I have a bucket list of places that I want to visit that I started years ago, and I keep adding to it. But I try every year to cross a place off, and so I present that as an example if they don't understand, and I look for people that will go, you're right. Actually, it could be something simple as, I've always wanted to buy a Louis Vuitton purse. And I've been, selling Arvon on the side for years and saving for that. That's still somebody that has a goal, right? And so I look for people that think about their future and their goals, because if they can personalize and have their own goals, then they should be able to understand what it means to work for a company that also has goals.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you could almost look at it in one way and say like, maybe it's like, well, hey, this year I want to run a 5K or whatever it might be. You could say like, oh, well, are you thinking about yourself? I want, this luxury item, or I want to go to this place. But really it's just that they're aspiring to something and having discipline maybe to try to achieve.
Because typically that person that's going to come in and check out every day, I could put money on it. They don't have very big goals. So they're probably not thinking about the 5K.
Yeah, right.
They don't have something in mind. So you need to hire people that have a like mind as you.
Aspirational
Yeah.
type.
Absolutely. In order to grow.
So I have a question, and it might not be appropriate. So if it's not,
Don't answer.
In California, we have crazy labor laws.
Right.
Do you come up against that at all in what you do?
Absolutely. Well, I didn't realize it until we started expanding out of the state, but I also feel fortunate that I've grown up in California. And once you understand the rules of California and you go into another state, your bar is set so high that when you go into another state, you're like, wow, this is nice. You know,
Awesome.
I do adapt some of the rules and laws that are here in California into other states. And so an example is here in California, we have state mandated paid sick leave. So every employer has to offer up to 24 hours of paid sick leave. We do not have to offer that in other states. And as a temporary staffing service, we don't charge our customers for it either. It comes out of pocket. So it is an expense. But I decided when we branched into some of the other states, like Montana, Texas, Oklahoma, Oregon, some of the states I think might have a smaller version of it, but I decided to continue that because I felt like that was a benefit that was good. It was useful for people to give them some leeway, and we do cover it out of pocket. Could I make a couple $100,000 more a year if I didn't offer it in other states? Absolutely. But I think that quality of life is more valuable, and it's going to come back tenfold if I do the right things by people. So there has been some California rules that are kind of hard to combat, but there has been some that I've decided to continue in other states as well.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
There's a couple that I do love. In California, when something doesn't work out with somebody, you have to hand them a check on their last day. And that's been an interesting thing to work through because we've had people that decide that, they want to move on or they're moving and they give us a 2-week notice. So we're like, great, we're going to, cut their last check at the end of the 2 weeks. But then they decide on Thursday of the 2-week notice, like, nah, never mind, I'm not going to stay. Legally, we're supposed to hand them a check on Thursday. And so that's been posing a problem when we have a corporate office in one city and it's occurring in another city. I do love the rule in Texas is that in most states, you just pay them on the next payday. And so maybe I should write to our legislation to ask they change that.
Hey there. If you've ever listened to Extremely Valid Points podcast and thought, if Nathan, Jenny, and Dave could do this, I totally could too, then we say you're right. We've got some free tips available on our website. Head over to extremelyvalidpoints.com and download our free guide to start your podcast. We're happy to help.
The first time we had to let an employee go, there was a hotline that we called because I was like, okay, I have to fire someone. What do I do so I don't get sued or in trouble? And I was a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of things I needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, are you serious?
Yes, there's a lot. EDD packets. Yes, there's a lot. And that's one of the benefits of a company working with us is that we do all that. But yes, when it comes to my own internal staff, you compare it to the rules in other states, it's definitely more difficult here.
But hey, I still like living in California. I know a lot of business owners complain, it's so hard to do business in California, but you don't want to do business in other places. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I think California is one of the most beautiful states in all of the U.S. I think that we do have a great landscape to have a really thriving, successful business or businesses. I think the rules sometimes are they are a little stifling, but it's nothing that we can't overcome for sure.
Absolutely. It's heavy. Sometimes it feels heavy to me, like just trying to keep up with everything. Every year, new changes and like the OSHA changes and the COVID pay and all these things.
Yeah, but I like what you said about it. It raises the bars. So when you expand into other states, it's
much
like,
easier.
this is easy.
You're like,
those heavy weights trained you, it's like working out.
It's like getting your business degree at Harvard. You know, you grow up in California. If you can grow your business up here, you can
do it anywhere. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think that businesses here in California, I think that they are tougher businesses. I'm trying to think of another word of saying it, but when I go into other states and I present the model that we have created here in California to other states, it's impressive to them, right? The level of degree that we're offering things that I think, when you're put under fire, a coal under fire becomes a diamond. And so I think if you're not in a state like California where you do have a lot of rules and restrictions and things that you have to overcome, and you go into the other states, I think people see that as a huge attribute for them to do business with you too. So you would think in some states that they wouldn't want to do business with companies in California, but I've seen the opposite, where they've been rather impressed with our branding and our model.
Wow, that is a really great perspective to hear. I love it.
Well, and oftentimes, the rules, the laws, the regulations, they come about because of something that's happened, right? So sometimes it makes it there's more bureaucracy and that kind of thing, but it's usually because there's something that's happened. Speaking of getting your last paycheck, I think I was in a hotel in Michigan once, and we heard a commotion at the front desk, and it was like the boyfriend of somebody who had gotten fired was there demanding the check that was due, and he ended up throwing a chair through the window, leaving the premises right at me.
Oh my
Broke the window. So, yeah, I mean, maybe having your check on the last day, you can avoid a scene like that,
That's why they do it.
That's why.
So you don't get beat up.
Saves class.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, one benefit to that person is they'll continue to be paid until they get their check. So maybe they shouldn't be over there throwing a fit because they'll get 3 more days worth of pay.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I know.
So what's next for Higher Up?
What's next for Higher Up is I would like to expand some more. We are shooting for at least 4 more offices in the next quarter. So we're going to be expanding into Arizona and Florida. We already have some business in like Illinois and Oklahoma, as I mentioned, but we haven't put a office there and a team there. So that's going to be the next focus, just to do that. And at some point, we already have a very structured program and a very structured company, I guess, and like branding. But at some point, we're going to go to market on it and offer it as a franchise, because start offering for other owners to come under our umbrella and sell it as a brand, so we can continue to all grow together too. So that's basically where I'm going with the company.
Very cool. It's exciting.
A Subway model.
There you go.
Do you have an exit strategy?
I don't. I sometimes get asked that in interviews, especially if it's a key position for our company, because they want to know, like, is your daughter going to come in and run the company at some point? And I said, no, I'm just going to work forever. It's the goal. So I don't currently have an exit strategy on the business. I'm just eye on the prize at the moment.
Love it.
Not thinking about the pina coladas yet. Yeah.
When you love what you do, why plan on doing anything else?
And I come from a family of workaholics, of people that work hard. My grandmother, she's 81 years old, and she does hair, and she still has a salon and has all the same customers. And so
I love that.
I know she's tenacious. And so I get a lot of my attributes from her. And so I just can't imagine what I would do if I wasn't working. I'd probably, have to run a charity or do something. And so right now we'll just keep focusing on Higher Up.
Did you always know you wanted to be a business owner?
I knew I wanted to be a career woman. I did know that. I remember being at church one day with we used to call each other bosom sisters, right? Your best friend, where we sit and chat and talk about the future. And she was telling me how she wants to get married and have 6 kids, maybe 8 kids, maybe, I don't know, maybe 10. And I'm like, I want to work in New York and wear a suit, and I want to be a businesswoman. And they're like, you don't want kids? And I'm like, well, I mean, I do, but I mean, I kind of want a career more, and here I am like having this conversation, and I had to be less than 8 years old because the church that we used to go to, we moved when I was 8. So even as young as then, I looked at strong women in business and I aspired to be like them. I thought it was impressive, and I'd love to see more women in business. I'd love to see more equality, I guess you could say, of the split of men and women, especially in management or executive positions, because it's still highly dominated male, which is okay. But I think we're coming up in the world. So that was always an aspiration of mine.
Love it. That's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah. So, and have you, on that topic of women in business, going back to that topic, what kind of things have you had to overcome or experienced yourself in terms of that like gap?
I think that we all have things that we work past, right? We all like an elephant in the room. An example would be when I came into business, I was quite young. So I started in staffing when I was 22. And oftentimes when I'd walk into a sales meeting, it was one of the things they say, like, oh, you're so young. And so I had to figure out, how can I avoid the elephant in the room? So I think the same applies as far as women in business. If you're interacting with somebody that you get that impression that they're giving you less respect because you're a woman, how do you present yourself to demand more authority, right? To be respected the same as a man is respected. And so what I learned was at a young age, when people were commenting on my age, is I learned that if I elevate my voice, if I sit up taller, if I keep eye contact. So there's things that you can do in the way that you present yourself that I think you can get past kind of that, like I said, elephant in the room, if it's an individual that is automatically coming into a situation with less respect because you are female. And I hate to say it, but it's still true today, right? Women, just had, how many years ago did we be able to start voting? And so it hasn't been 100 years yet. And so it is still a new idea that's growing. And so you just work around commanding more respect and authority when you interact with people, especially males.
When you do business with other companies, do you prefer to work with women? Or, I mean, not to say like, because that would almost be just as sexist, right? But, I've talked to a lot of women business owners who say, well, it's not that I don't like doing business with men, but I want other women to be lifted up. So if I can find another businesswoman to work with, then I want to work with them.
As a preference.
Yeah.
I don't look at the sex of the individual and my decision. I think what I look for is somebody, like you said, lifts you up, right? I think that it doesn't matter if you're male or female. I think that if you can promote one another and respect one another, I think that that's more important, because there are a lot of women out there that promote and respect other women. There are a lot of women out there that don't promote and respect other women, just like there are a lot of men that don't and do. And so I think what's more important is to have a common partnership with somebody that is on the same page with you and cares just as much about your growth as their growth, versus looking at you as somebody that's secondary to them. So it can happen with females too.
Those are great answers. Very diplomatic. Love it. Are you satisfied with her answers?
Love it.
I do. There is one obstacle I have, is that I do have more women that apply to work for us. And so it is something that we're working on, because I would like to have a balance of diversity in the company. But I do find that we get more application from women, especially strong women or women that aspire the same way that I do, to work for us, because they're joining the cause. The battle call is calling, and we're all going, we're in this force together, which is truly exciting, because again, I'd love to see more equality in our management and in executive level positions for men and women. But I do think that it's important to have a good balance.
Another question we wanted to ask you was regarding COVID. All of us it's been rough, right?
Mm-hmm.
How have you guys been dealing with these sudden changes and this pandemic, and how's it affected your business?
The shifts. It's constantly changing and an adaptation. But I could tell you that last year, or not last year, it's been so long, 2020, March of 2020. I remember we were coming back from a trip and our daughter called and said, it's all over Snapchat. There's some type of flu that's really bad and it's coming from China and they're shutting down. And we're like, no, it's okay. It'll be okay. That'll never happen. You'll be fine. And then a week later, it's like, oh, everything shut down. And in staffing, how we're paid is people go to work. Just like with any other type of service business, you pay for the service, but for us, we amortize our service fee over the course of hours. So as somebody is working for somebody else, our fee is in there. So it's an easier way to pay for our services. And also, if that person doesn't work out, you stop paying for our services, right? Because we need to get back on board and get you someone new. Well, you can imagine when everything's shutting down and everybody's going home, over the course of maybe 5 days, we had about 60% of the people that were working for us all lose their jobs.
Wow.
Big chunk. And you think of it in sales to just over a 1 week period lose all of your business and really not know what's going to happen next, where, when we're going to be able to open back up, when people are going to be able to go back to work. Will they want to go back to work? Will they feel comfortable with it? What are the rules that we need to adapt to and when is that going to happen? And so I remember at that time, and let's see, we're a little bit over 10 years in business and my husband, he's great. We were in the kitchen and I'm, stressing out and he's like, it's okay. And I was like, but what if we lose everything? And he was like, it's okay. We'll figure it out and start over. And I'm like, start over? Don't ever say that to me. Like, start over. I built this 10 years and it's just like disappearing. And I remember I always pride myself on being somebody that rallies, right? And I tell people when they're down, I'm like, all right, give yourself a pity party and then rally. Come on now, like pick yourself up and let's get going. And I had my little pity party for like maybe 24, 48 hours. And then I'm like, all right, let's rally. Where's the need? Right? Who needs us right now? The world hasn't stopped. It's still going. It's on pause for some industries, but it's still going. And so we figured out two things during COVID. One, everybody's at home. And so what are you doing when you're at home? You're on your phone all the time. So social media was huge. So we beefed up our social media at the time. And we were just plugging stories, content, all of us, just overkill. Everybody in the organization was pumping things out there. The second thing
Love it, by the way.
Yeah.
Love it. Yes.
The second thing we figured out is where's the need? And the need was in healthcare. That was where the need was. There was individuals that were sick. There was new precautions that we needed to take at hospitals in order to make sure that people weren't sick when they came in. And so we started contacting pretty much every medical provider and hospital in the area. And luckily, there was an individual at one who was one of my followers that was a friend that I had met years ago and stayed in touch and stayed in connection on social media and was seeing all of the posts that I was putting out there. And, lo and behold, that worked out. We got the contract with that hospital group and it's probably one of the biggest customers that we ever landed in the history of Higher Up. And we landed it during COVID, right? And we're still working with them today. They're an amazing employer. But it came from pivoting, right? I had to figure out what's out there, how do we get to them, and we had to readjust the business. And so I think that's important, is that things change constantly, and COVID is just another example of how things can change. But there's going to be other things that will arise that will change. And like I said, do a 24-hour pity party and then pick it up and rally and figure it out. So
that's great. I mean, it's really your worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. Worst imaginable thing that can happen to your business happens, and it becomes your greatest success story ever.
Ever.
That's amazing. and the secret is have a pity party. No more than 48 hours. And then rally.
Rally.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and it's so true. Like you need a moment to grieve and to get it all out because it does suck. You know, let's not lie to ourselves about what's going on. It sucks. But once you get through that, then you can start to look for the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel and try to find, you know, where is the silver lining in this? You know, what can we do? Okay, it sucks, but what can we make out of, you know, the lemons kind of thing?
Absolutely. That moment to allow yourself to feel allows yourself to think again. And
That's great.
I think it's super important to take yourself out of it, but it's important to give yourself a little bit of leeway to just be there if you need to be there. Yeah.
Yes. And so I wonder too, for you, as, you know, things begin to hopefully at some point get back to normal or, you know, I mean, maybe it's never going to be like it used to be, but the economy is going to recover. And now you have this whole new side of your business that is there, that's helped you through these hard times. But then the other side of your business is going to kick back in.
Right.
And now then you're going to be even bigger.
Right. Yeah. Just like Nathan said, one of the hardest struggles in business ended up being one of the greatest things that ever happened to us. Absolutely. A lot of things grew from COVID, even though it's been a struggle. But again, it you know, I think you needed to pivot, right? You needed to think your way through it. Some people get defeated too easily. And I think that self-defeat stops you quicker than the world does.
It's true.
Totally.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I just want to thank you for being here, for sharing your heart, for being so transparent, and just really enjoyed getting to know you better, learning more about your business, and just think it's so inspiring to see how far you've come. And I can't wait to see what continues to happen for Kirkman, Beck, and Higher Up Staffing.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
So, Rebecca, if someone wants to get in touch with your company, maybe they might want to see if you can help them find a job. Maybe you can help them hire someone. How do they get in touch with you?
The best way is to go to our website, which is higherupss.com. It's spelled out HIREUPSS.com. So we abbreviate staffing services. You can also send an email to our general email box that's hello@higherupss.com, or call our corporate office here in Fresno. It's 559-579-1332, and we'll connect you with our closest office to your location that can help you.
Well, thanks again for joining us. It was such a pleasure. Great conversation. And we'll see you next time on Extremely Valid Points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending time with us at Extremely Valid Points podcast. To learn more about this episode, see our show notes at extremelyvalidpoints.com. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen. Follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram at EVP_podcast.
If you need help with your video for your business or nonprofit, connect with Dave at ellipsispro.co.
And if you need help with digital marketing, Nathan and Jenny can be found at worldlightmedia.com.
Or feel free to send us an email at questions@extremelyvalidpoints.com. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.